Neon White keeps the player moving, fast and with purpose. On the surface, the main way that this game does this is through its ranking system. The player needs to achieve a certain number of gold ranks before being able to progress to the next chapter of the game. To achieve these gold ranks, the player needs to be able to play through the level quick enough. However, there is a lot going on behind the scenes that motivates the player to keep pushing forward, and at pace. None of this is new. A lot of ideas in Neon White are borrowed from games like Dune. Other games like Ultra Kill and Post Void have achieved similar goals with these design principles. However, Neon White, I would argue, is one of the best with regards to pushing the player forward in combat. And one final thing before we get into how Neon White does this, let's talk briefly about what push forward combat is. Push forward combat is a term used to describe the desired player behavior when in an arena-like level, usually in a first-person shooter. Instead of what's called toilet bowling around a level, which is basically moving around the perimeter until the player has cleared the arena, push-forward combat encourages players to dive deep into the center of the fray, really getting into the thick of the fight and feeling like a badass. Neon White is not an arena FPS, but it uses the same principles regardless, to the point where even if your focus is just to get from point A to point B, you'll most likely end up doing it as fast as you can, just because the game forces you to. So let's get on to the first point. Pushing forward is a requirement. This isn't referring to the fact that almost all levels in the game requires the players to kill all the enemies before progressing, but more so the fact that the cards dropped from certain enemies are required to traverse the level. More often than not, there is a big gap between platforms, and more often than not, a jock enemy is going to be positioned just before it. If you slay the jock, you get the card Godspeed, which, when used, boosts the player across a large gap. Similarly, the frog enemy will often be placed near a jump which is too high for your regular jump to reach. If you kill the frog, you get Elevate, which gives you a vertical boost upwards. This loop of killing and then being rewarded with a tool to progress is very similar to Doom's ammo and health drops from enemies. It forces the player towards where enemies die so they can keep moving forward. The second point is similar to the first but with a distinct difference. There are a small amount of enemies in Neon White which provide traversal benefits, which are often required to complete the level, without giving the player a resource, so to speak. One example is the balloon enemy. When you hit the balloon enemy with your body, you are pushed upwards. These are usually chained together to give a satisfying stair climb feel as you bounce from one to another. Another example is the Shocker. The Shocker is an enemy displayed flat on the ground with 6 petal-like platforms to land on. If you land on the green one, you are propelled forward whilst killing the enemy. These 2 points achieve push forward combat by heavily motivating and in most cases forcing the player to run towards the enemy in order to progress. Thirdly, ammo. Ammo is a scarce resource in a lot of levels, often requiring the player to make precise shots at speed. If the player misses too many shots, they will lose the gun and the opportunity to use the gun's ability to traverse the level, which usually causes a restart. Because of this, the player is encouraged to move closer to enemies before taking their shot, especially because of the speed they are going at during these combat encounters. Making sure you close the gap on the enemies is important for increasing the chance of landing the hit needed to kill the enemy. Finally, we move on to enemy placement. Especially in the later levels of Neon White, enemies are often placed specifically so the player has to kill them and kill them fast in order to get a new weapon with a new ability so they can stay alive. These enemies are often placed mid-air or close to a gap in the level where if the player would fall down it, they would die. Therefore, getting to these enemies quickly and then getting to the next lot of enemies is important for the player so they either don't die or don't have to reset the level. Anyway, that's it from me. Hopefully this has given you some ideas on how to achieve push forward combat in your game. Thank you for watching and keep on keeping on.